Hi, friends. Last Sunday, we considered the very beginning of the Exodus story, the oppression of the Israelites by the Egyptians, including Pharaoh's order of infanticide, and the birth and survival of Moses. There are many points of irony and reversal in this part of the story that I personally find interesting and insightful. So I'm going to share some of them with you today. The first is Pharaoh's order of infanticide, first to the Hebrew midwives and then seemingly to any and all Egyptians. Pharaoh ordered that all of the male Hebrew babies be killed. Now, later in the story, when Pharaoh refuses to release the Israelites from their slavery, God sends plagues to convince him. Now, Pharaoh's heart is hardened until the 10th plague finally breaks through. The 10th plague was the death of the firstborn. Exodus 12:29 says, "At midnight the Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock." Pharaoh commanded that the Hebrew baby boys be killed, but the girls could live. Now, there are 2 points of irony here. The first is that evidently Pharaoh assumed that women posed no threat to him. But all of the heroes in this part of the story who foil Pharaoh's plan are women. There are the midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, Moses' mother, Moses' sister, and Pharaoh's own daughter. It's ironic that Pharaoh allowed the baby girls to live, and yet it was women who led to his undoing. The second irony here is that Pharaoh is decimating his own workforce. The Hebrew slaves were building his empire brick by brick, and the men were the primary physical laborers. If he kills all the baby boys, it won't be long before he has no workers, whether he decides to let them go or not. Now, Pharaoh's edict was to throw all of the male Hebrew babies into the Nile. Moses' mother technically obeyed his command and put Moses in the river, but safely in a basket. And of all people to find him, it was Pharaoh's own daughter, who not only allowed Moses to live, but adopted him as her own. And so Moses, the very one whom God would use to deliver his people out of Pharaoh's hand, was raised in Pharaoh's royal palace. Now, the role and function of the Nile River reverse several times in the story. Water is essential to life, and in a nation like Egypt that is mostly desert, the Nile was both symbolically and literally a source of life. Pharaoh makes it a source of death as the mode of extinction. It becomes a source of life again as Moses floats in a basket and is drawn out of the river by Pharaoh's daughter. Later in the story, it will become a source of death again as the first plague, in which all the water in the river was turned to blood, and the fish in the river died. The river stank so that the Egyptians could not drink its water, and there was blood throughout the whole land of Egypt. That's Exodus 7:20-21. Now, there are other ironies and reversals in the story, but the point of them all is that God is always working, very often through people, to bring justice from oppression, freedom from abuse, and life from death. Just when we think evil, destruction, or disappointment has the last word, God speaks again. And it's always a word of healing and goodness and life. Thanks for watching today. And remember, this coming Sunday, July 2nd, we're having one worship service at 10 o'clock at the grandstand on Broadway, which will be set up for the 4th of July street fair. If you're watching online, go to our Facebook page for the live stream. I'll see you around town this weekend and again next week.